The door slammed in my face with a finality that echoed through the country club's marble hallway. I stood there for a moment, staring at the ornate wood, listening to the muffled sounds of laughter and clinking glasses from inside the private dining room. Family only, Aunt Victoria had said, her Botox-frozen face managing to convey disdain despite its limited mobility. Behind her, I've caught a glimpse of the banner, "Happy 85th birthday, Grandpa Joe." Except Grandpa Joe had been dead for 3 weeks. I pulled out my phone and checked the time, 2:47 p.m. Perfect. Attorney Morrison would be expecting me at 3 o'clock, and the drive from the country club to his office was only 10 minutes. I had time to grab coffee and compose myself before the real show began. As I walked back through the lobby, the club manager, who'd known me since I was 5 and Grandpa first started bringing me here, gave me a sympathetic look. "I'm sorry, Miss Emma," he said quietly. "I tried to tell them your name was on the reservation list, but..." "It's fine, Robert," I assured him. "Actually, would you do me a favor? Make sure the champagne keeps flowing in there. The 1996 Dom Perignon, specifically, Grandpa's favorite." He looked puzzled but nodded. "Of course. And Robert, send the bill to Victoria Ashford's personal account, all of it." His eyes widened slightly, but he was too professional to comment. He knew, as I did, that a party for 50 at the country club with vintage champagne would run at least $20,000. Victoria would be furious when she got the bill, but she'd pay it rather than admit she couldn't afford Grandpa's standards. The coffee shop across from Morrison Associates was nearly empty. I ordered a black coffee, Grandpa's influence. He always said fancy coffee drinks were for people with more money than sense, and found a corner table where I could watch the law office's entrance. My phone buzzed. A text from my cousin Brandon. "Where are you? Mom says you're not invited, but that seems harsh. Want me to sneak you in?" Sweet Brandon, the only one of Victoria's kids who hadn't been completely corrupted by greed. I typed back, "Thanks, but I'm fine. Enjoy the party. They're reading the will after." He added, "Mom has champagne on ice. She keeps talking about renovating Grandpa's house once it's hers." I nearly laughed. Victoria had been planning to gut Grandpa's 1920s Craftsman since the day he'd been diagnosed with cancer. She'd shown him paint swatches while he was still in chemotherapy, talking about modernizing and improving the value. He'd listened politely, then asked me privately to take photos of every room so I could remember it properly. At 2:58, I crossed the street and entered the law office. Morrison's assistant, who'd known about this meeting for months, gave me a warm smile. "He's ready for you, Emma, conference room 3. Attorney Morrison stood when I entered, along with 2 other men I recognized as partners in the firm. On the table was a video camera, several documents, and a small digital recorder. "Emma," Morrison shook my hand. "Are you ready for this?" "I've been ready for 6 months, I said, taking my seat, "ever since Grandpa told me what they were planning." Morrison nodded gravely. "Your grandfather was very specific about the timing. The reading of the false will should be happening in approximately 13 minutes, I confirmed. Aunt Victoria was always punctual when money was involved. "Then let's begin." He activated the video camera and stated the date, time, and all parties present. "This is the official reading of the last will and testament of Joseph Edmund Whitmore, executed on March 15, 2024, in the presence of 3 witnesses and myself as notary." He slid a document across to me, the real will, the one Grandpa had created after learning his children were already dividing up his assets while he was still alive. "But first," Morrison continued, "Mr. Whitmore left specific instructions that this recording be played." He pressed play on the digital recorder. Grandpa's voice filled the room, strong despite the cancer that had been killing him. "If you're listening to this, it means my children are currently at the country club, celebrating my birthday 3 weeks after my death and preparing to read a will that's as fake as their grief. Emma, sweetheart, I hope you're not too hurt by being excluded, though knowing Victoria, she probably slammed a door in your face. She always was dramatically predictable." I smiled through the tears that threatened to fall. Even in death, Grandpa knew exactly how things would play out. His recorded voice continued, "Let me be clear about why I've done this. For the past 2 years, I've watched my children circle like vultures. Victoria priced out renovations while I was still in the hospital. Richard had my cars appraised during my first round of chemo. Patricia tried to get power of attorney by claiming I was mentally incompetent, while I was still running board meetings." Morrison paused the recording. "Would you like to take a break?" "No," I said firmly, "keep playing." "But Emma," Grandpa's voice grew warmer, "came to every doctor's appointment. She spent nights at the hospital, reading me books and sneaking in real food. She never once asked about money or inheritance. She just asked if I was comfortable, if I needed anything, if I wanted to talk about mom. The tears came then, silent and steady. So I'm leaving everything to the only person who loved me and not my money. Emma gets the house, the investments, the cars, the art collection, all of it, to my children. I leave exactly what they gave me in my final years, nothing but disappointment. Morrison stopped the recording and handed me a tissue. There's more, but we should discuss the particulars first. The estate is valued at approximately $18 million, including the house, investment portfolio, and various collections. And the children's portion? I asked, though I knew the answer. $1 each, to prevent them from contesting on grounds of being forgotten. He smiled grimly. Your grandfather was very thorough. What about the fake will? Morrison checked his watch. Right about now, Attorney Blackwood, Victoria's lawyer and golf buddy, is reading a very official-looking document that leaves everything split between the 3 children. Of course, it's completely fraudulent. Blackwood doesn't know that. Victoria gave it to him claiming it was Grandpa's most recent will. She forged it? With help from Richard's secretary, who used to work here and had access to our letterhead. Morrison pulled out another folder. We have security footage, email records, and witness testimony. Your grandfather insisted on documenting everything. My phone buzzed. Brandon again. Mom is crying happy tears. Says the house is hers. This is weird, right? I showed Morrison the text. He smiled. I think it's time for phase 2. He handed me another document. This is an emergency injunction preventing any member of the Whitmore family from accessing or removing items from your grandfather's properties. It was filed this morning and goes into effect now. As if on cue, my phone exploded with notifications. I let it ring, focusing on Morrison's explanation of the trust funds, the investment accounts, the careful way Grandpa had structured everything to ensure his children couldn't touch a penny. There's one more thing, Morrison said, pulling out a sealed envelope. He left this for you to open after the will reading. I recognized Grandpa's handwriting on the front, for my Emma, the only one who called me Grandpa instead of an ATM. Inside was a handwritten letter and a small key. My dearest Emma. By now, Victoria has probably changed the locks on the house, thinking it's hers. She always was presumptuous. The key enclosed opens a safety deposit box at First National. Inside, you'll find your grandmother's jewelry, the pieces Victoria has been demanding for years, and something else. I've kept a journal for the past 5 years. Every conversation, every manipulation, every time they treated me like a checkbook instead of a father. It's all there. Use it if they challenge the will, or don't. The choice is yours. But know this, you earned every penny not through manipulation or greed, but through love. You were the only one who saw me as a person in my final years, not a piggy bank. The house is yours, but more importantly, the memories in it are yours. Keep them or change them as you see fit. Just promise me you'll live in it, not just own it. Fill it with laughter again. All my love. Grandpa. There's a film crew waiting outside the country club, Morrison said gently. Local news. Someone, and I can't imagine who, tipped them off that the Whitmore family was celebrating a dead man's birthday while reading a fraudulent will. I laughed despite myself. Grandpa? He may have made a call before he passed. He was very thorough. Morrison stood. Shall we go deliver the real news? The drive back to the country club felt both eternal and instant. By the time we arrived, chaos had already erupted. Police cars were in the parking lot. Someone had discovered the forgery faster than expected. The news crew was getting footage of Victoria being escorted out in handcuffs, mascara streaming down her face. Emma, Patricia spotted me first, rushing over in her designer heels. Thank God you're here. There's been a terrible mistake. Someone says the will is fake, but that's impossible. You have to help us. Why would I help you? I asked calmly. I'm not family, remember? Her face went white. You know something. Morrison stepped forward. Miss Whitmore has asked me to inform you that you're trespassing on private property. This country club event was paid for with stolen funds, stolen from her inheritance. That's impossible. Richard appeared, his face purple with rage. Dad left everything to us. We're his children. Yes, I said quietly. You're the children who priced out his assets while he was dying, who tried to have him declared incompetent, who were so busy planning his funeral that you forgot he wasn't dead yet. You manipulated him. Victoria shrieked as an officer guided her toward the police car. You turned him against us. No, I said, loud enough for the news cameras to pick up. You turned him against you. I just loved him. Apparently, that was worth more than your greed. Morrison played the recording then, right there in the parking lot, Grandpa's voice carrying across the assembled crowd. His children, my aunts and uncle, stood frozen as they heard his words, his disappointment, his final judgment on their character. "The house is mine," Victoria kept muttering. "I already called contractors." "Then you'll need to call them back," I said, though I'd worry more about the forgery charges, and the elder abuse investigation, and the fraud. The next hours were a blur of police statements, paperwork, and phone calls. By evening, I stood in front of Grandpa's house, my house now, with the new key Morrison had given me. Victoria had indeed changed the locks, but a locksmith was already at work. Inside, I found they'd already started marking things for removal. Post-it notes on furniture marked Victoria, Richard, or Patricia. They'd been so confident, so certain of their inheritance. I left the notes up for now, evidence for the lawyers. In Grandpa's study, I found what I was looking for, the photo albums he'd hidden when the vultures started circling. Pictures of him and Grandma, of my mother, who'd died when I was 10, of me at every age and stage, the family they'd tried to erase because we represented competition for their inheritance. My phone, silent for hours, finally rang, an unknown number. "Is this Emma Whitmore?" a trembling voice asked. "Yes? This is Brandon. I'm calling from a friend's phone. Mom took mine." He paused. "I wanted to say I'm sorry, for everything. I didn't know. I mean, I knew they were awful to Grandpa, but I didn't know how bad." "It's not your fault, Brandon. Would it be okay if I visited sometimes? The house, I mean, Grandpa taught me to play chess in the library. I'd like to remember him properly." "Of course," I said, surprising myself. "Grandpa would want that." "Mom says you're evil, that you stole everything. What do you think?" A long pause. "I think Grandpa knew exactly what he was doing, and I think he made the right choice." After we hung up, I walked through the house, removing the post-it notes one by one. In their place, I put up the photos from the albums, Grandpa young and strong, Grandma laughing at some long-forgotten joke, my mother as a child in this very house. The doorbell rang. Morrison stood on the porch with a bottle of wine and a box of documents. "Thought you might want company," he said, "and there are some papers to sign." We sat in Grandpa's kitchen, my kitchen, and went through everything, the investment accounts, the property deeds, the detailed instructions Grandpa had left for maintaining his collections. "He really thought of everything," I murmured. "He had help," Morrison admitted. Every time you visited, he'd come to my office the next day with new ideas, new protections. Emma mentioned the kids were pestering her about the house. He'd say, "Better make sure that's ironclad." "They'll contest it," I said. It wasn't a question. "They'll try, but forgery charges tend to complicate civil suits. Hard to claim you're the rightful heir when you're facing criminal charges for faking the will." My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is Patricia. You've ruined our family. I hope you're happy." I showed it to Morrison, who immediately took a screenshot. "Save everything. Their lawyers will advise them to stop contacting you, but anger makes people stupid." The next morning, I woke up in Grandpa's guest room. I couldn't bring myself to use the master yet. The house was quiet in a way it hadn't been during his illness, when nurses and visitors had filled the spaces with purposeful noise. I made coffee in his ancient percolator, the one Victoria had always mocked, and sat on the back porch watching the sun rise over the garden he'd loved. The doorbell rang at 7 a.m. Through the peephole, I saw a man in a suit holding an envelope. "Process server." "Emma Whitmore?" he asked when I opened the door. "Yes. You're being sued." He handed me the envelope and left without another word. I didn't need to open it to know what it was. The children, Victoria out on bail, apparently, were contesting the will, claiming undue influence, mental incompetence, the usual suspects. I called Morrison. They filed. "Already? They're more desperate than I thought. Forward me everything. We'll respond by noon." The legal battle was swift and brutal. Morrison had been right. Criminal charges made civil claims nearly impossible. The judge took one look at the forged will, the elder abuse evidence, and Grandpa's meticulously documented history of his children's behavior, and dismissed their case with prejudice. "The court finds," the judge intoned, "that Joseph Whitmore was of sound mind and that his decision to disinherit his children was not only legal but, based on the evidence presented, entirely reasonable." The court further notes that attempting to probate a forged will is a serious crime that undermines the very foundation of our legal system. Victoria fainted. Richard stormed out. Patricia just sat there, staring at me with undisguised hatred. Brandon found me in the hallway afterward. Congratulations, I guess? It's not about winning, I told him. It's about honoring what Grandpa wanted. Can I still visit? To play chess? Every Sunday, if you want. Grandpa would like that. He smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from any of that branch of the family in years. He taught you too, didn't he? Chess? Every move, I confirmed, including how to think 8 steps ahead. 6 months later, I sat in Grandpa's study, my study, writing thank you notes for the memorial library I'd established in his name. The house was different now, filled with life again. I hosted book clubs in the parlor, charity events in the garden, chess tournaments in the library. Victoria, Richard, and Patricia had scattered after the criminal trials. Victoria got probation and community service, her reputation in tatters. Richard's business partners distanced themselves, leading to bankruptcy. Patricia's husband divorced her, tired of the scandal and greed. But Brandon came every Sunday, getting better at chess and slowly learning who his grandfather really was through the stories I shared and the photos I'd rehung. Aunt Emma, he said one afternoon, moving his knight into position, I've been thinking about Grandpa's will. Oh? He didn't just leave you money and houses, he left you the responsibility of remembering him correctly. That's harder than inheriting cash. I studied the board, seeing the trap he'd set 3 moves ago. When did you get so wise? Grandpa's journal, you let me read parts of it. He wrote about legacy versus inheritance, how one is about stuff and the other is about soul. Checkmate in 4 moves, I said, moving my queen. He grinned, moving his bishop. Checkmate in 2, Grandpa taught me that variation. I laughed, tipping over my king. Of course he did. That night, I found the birthday banner from the country club stuffed in the trash behind the garage. Happy 85th birthday, Grandpa Joe, it proclaimed to the empty alley. I left it there. Some things were better forgotten. Inside, I lit a candle for Grandpa's real birthday, still 3 months away. He would have been 86, not 85. They couldn't even get that right in their greed. You did it, Grandpa, I whispered to his photo. 8 moves ahead, just like chess. They never saw it coming. In the end, they'd excluded me from a fake party for a dead man, reading a fake will for fake love. But I'd been invited to something much better, a real relationship with a grandfather who saw me for who I was, not what I could inherit. Family only? I was the only family he had left, the only one who knew that inheritance meant nothing if you didn't inherit the love, the memories, the stories, the person behind the money. And that was worth more than $18 million. Though the 18 million didn't hurt either. Checkmate, Grandpa, and thank you for teaching me the game.